Welcome to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, presented by Worth Wealth Management, a weekly conversation with area leaders about how to persevere during uncertain times. Now here's your host, Gary Shorman.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times. Certainly, our program today is going to challenge our thinking of the way we go about some things, but certainly one of those things that is really cool that's happening at Fort Hays State University. Our program is focused on solving crimes, and our guest today is Dr. Morgan Steele, who's the Assistant Professor of Criminal Justice at Fort Hays State University. He has the challenge of building a new degree program in the critical field of solving crimes. It's a new bachelor degree program in criminalistics. And Dr. Steele, welcome to our show today.
Thank you for having me.
You know, I was reading through what you guys are doing over there, and part of it is okay, what exactly is criminalistics? Can you kind of give us just an overview, a definition, or what that really means to those of us that aren't dealing with these kind of issues every day?
Sure. So criminalistics is forensic science. We're applying the scientific fields of chemistry, biology, and geosciences to solving crimes. So everyone is probably pretty familiar with Law and Order, CSI, NCIS, Bones, any other crime show on TV right now or in the past several years that have depicted forensic science and how it's used in the criminal justice field. So this is what this looks like as a degree program.
So when you talk about that, what is different? I know there's some criminal justice classroom and programs at Fort Hays State right now. What is different from that?
So our criminal justice degree is focused on the people who are going to be working in the system, either trying to solve crimes or help victims or identify and rehabilitate people who've gotten in trouble with the law before, anything like that. But criminalistics is that hard science class, like that hard science perspective, but bringing it in and saying, okay, you know how to do these things in organic chemistry or genetics or microbiology or geographic information systems or any of these other classes. Here's how you can use the tools in those classes to actually solve crimes and help people and help our society.
Well, it's a multi-level product that you're trying to teach. It's just amazing to me. I watch TV, and when you see the criminal shows come on that you were talking about, the technology they use to make solve those crimes, maybe that's a better way to say it. Is this what you're teaching, or is that stuff all TV stuff?
So, I mean, there's obviously a little bit of dramatization about like how fast things get done or how easily people are able to find things. But in reality, a lot of the things that are depicted on TV, there's some foundation in science. And I'll leave it to the scientists in chemistry and biology, particularly Dr. Arvin Cruz at Fort Hays' chemistry department and Dr. Tara Phelps-Durr in the biology department to really speak on the accuracy of that, because I don't want to speak about like how accurate DNA is, because it has been a long time since I've been in a biology classroom.
Yeah, that's one of those things that it takes the skilled people in each one of those areas to make that happen. So who signs up for this class?
So this is something that we in both like the criminal justice program here at Fort Hays, but also the biology, chemistry, and geosciences program as well. We've had students who have double majored or they minored in one or both of our disciplines. And we realized that we could give these students an actual major and build it out for them so they're not having unfortunately, some of them had to take like fifth years, or they had to take a lot of classes all at once, or they had to wait for the stars to align to get classes, like to take them all on campus or fitting their schedule. So really, it's any student who is interested in applying hard sciences like chemistry and biology and using GPS and GIS systems to work within the criminal justice system. And
Well,
that's
that sounds
something
fun. You have this degree program, and you mentioned several areas there. A student that does sign up, go for this, has the right aptitude to do this, and be able to cover all those things. What will a typical major look like, and what all the different classes will they have to take?
so we have a pretty strong foundation in both chemistry and criminal justice. And that's mainly to give the students that firm foundation when they're at their first job or their next job, moving up the ladder or changing agencies or anything like that. To have those skill sets where they can hit the ground running and not have to wonder about how do they do this specific test, or if I had to work in this other department or on this other type of crime, they would have the skill sets to do that. So our majors start out with just a basic introductory level classes in criminal justice, criminalistics, and chemistry, just to really get that firm foundation, but also to figure out, is this something that they really want to do? Because as someone who has gone through a lot of schooling, like I don't want to put someone through several semesters worth of courses before they realize this isn't for them. So we give them just a really broad taste of everything to start out. And then from there, we build on ethical training, how forensic evidence is used within the criminal justice system, how different chemistry techniques can be used on different types of evidence, how biology plays a role in DNA analysis, but also dealing with people and how we can identify them. And then for those students who are interested, they can pursue a concentration in crime mapping and basically help agencies and communities identify where their problems are and design solutions to fix them.
Well, it's fascinating what if you tie that into what you see on some of the programs, even if it is a little more dramatic there. It seems they have some special tools. Does Fort Hays have what you need from the being able to use the tools to be able to train on those?
Absolutely. Like a lot of the tools that they may use in the crime shows are obviously, the highest end or the flashiest models, but many of the tools that one would use in the Kansas Bureau of Investigation Crime Lab in Great Bend or the crime lab in Kansas City, Kansas, or Wichita or wherever, they're the same tools that they're going to be using here at Fort Hays, or they're going to be the places where evidence is sent to get analyzed because the local agency doesn't have the budget for $250,000 biology machine or a chemistry mass spectrometer or anything like that.
Well, it's so interesting here. We're going to dive in a little bit more. I'm going to take a quick break here, Dr. Steele, and come back. I want to talk about a little bit about how you got into it, your background, what maybe who your mentors are for getting you started in this, and then talk a little bit about that graduate and what they will actually see if they go to work in Kansas. So we're going to take a quick break. Our program is brought to you by Worth Wealth Management, where you can live with confidence. Back with more after this.
Since 1776, the United States of America continues to stand tall. It's been tested before, many times. Through grit and the ability to move forward, we create better tomorrows. We help our clients live their best lives to and through retirement. We make it easier. Thank you, Kansas. Worth Wealth Management, enhancing lives and strengthening families.
Welcome back to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, a fascinating program about criminalistics and a new degree program that is taking place at Fort Hays State University. I'm going to ask this first. It seemed to me like, why Fort Hays State? Because, there's other schools around that may have, say, more resources, bigger schools, et cetera. Why Fort Hays State?
So Fort Hays State is really that special place where you get the faculty from day one to the day you graduate. It's going to be us, basically. As someone who did their undergraduate work at a large university, did their graduate work at a large university, and taught as a graduate student, there's a lot of benefit to having the professor in the room day in, day out, teaching you how this works. At Fort Hays, like, they have their graduate students helping out in the classroom, but it really is the professor in the room helping out, making sure everything is being done right. And that if the student has any questions, we're not relying on someone who is just a couple years more advanced. And Fort Hays has the resources. We've got the time, and for lack of a better term, we're a little scrappy. Like, we take advantage of the resources that we have out here in Western Kansas, and we use our resources effectively. So, for instance, Dr. Balthazar, he teaches the forensic science class in the chemistry department. He takes students out to a shooting range, and he puts some bullets in some various things, and they get to go recover the evidence. And he teaches them, okay, here's how you do this if you're dealing with this kind of substance, or the bullet has impacted this kind of thing. And people in the biology department, they are going to work with DNA samples. They are going to get in the lab and actually identify the samples. When it comes down to students coming into the criminal justice side of the house and taking their criminalistics class, they're going to look at forensic science cases, not only where forensic science and criminalistics was successful, but also where we dropped the ball. And they're going to have to figure out, okay, what could we have done better or differently to not only get justice, but also keep someone who is innocent of that crime from getting jammed up into the system.
So how did you get started in this? It's a fascinating system of finding the right person, finding the crime, and then the right person that committed the crime. What got you started here, Morgan?
I had an elective hour that I had to fill at Purdue University in Indiana, and my advisor was like, hey, you're majoring in psychology, you're thinking about like getting this double major in sociology, you need a hard science class, go take this one. And just kind of fell in love with it. My mentor in the field, Mr. Patrick Jones, he's a former Cook County Sheriff's deputy and criminal investigator. He worked on the John Wayne Gacy case in Chicago. Has some of the weirdest, funniest, darkest stories I think I've ever heard. And he really got me interested in this idea of, we are there to help people get closure, but also make sure that if someone has done something wrong and hurt someone, if we identify them, we either get them the help that they need so they stop doing this in the future, or we put them in prison and make sure they can't hurt other people.
Well, there's a lot goes into that. And your background, you talked about being at Purdue. What kind of education background did you have to get to this point?
So I have a bachelor's in psychology and a bachelor's in law and society at Purdue. Then I have my master's and PhD in criminal justice from the University of Cincinnati.
So talk about a great way for someone who wants to learn from people that have that kind of experience. So congratulations for that and making that happen. Just what would be what would be one of your favorite cases? The short version, not the long one, but what would be one of the cases you've seen? Because that's probably the best example of what student that takes this kind of degree program is going to be working on.
So you're putting me on the spot there.
That's
And
okay. I
I would,
assume along the line you studied different things, and you mentioned some things from a couple of your one of your mentors on that. But what's the story that really hooked you into this?
so I'm trying to make something that's safe for radio,
Uh-huh.
because some of the stuff that uh, Patrick would tell me about, and some of the stuff that uh, I have read or looked into, it's not for it can get to people. And that's something that
Uh-huh.
um, I want criminal justice, criminalistics students to keep in mind, is the fact that we're dealing with people who've been hurt or victimized or have done horrible things to people. And one of the things that really sticks out to me is identifying um, remains where there really is no face left. There is very limited information we can go off of, except maybe bones and insects or something like that. And being able to figure out, okay, when did this person die? How did they die? Is this some family member of someone where we can give them closure? I was very fortunate when I was at Purdue that I was able to visit the Forensic Anthropology Research Center at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. And they had donated bodies out for us to collect insects on, and bodies that have been left out in the elements for days, weeks at a time. And our job in that point was to figure out how long had they been outside, how long had they been exposed, and how long since they had died, basically. And I've been following excuse me, talking about current events right now, but following the events around the two hurricanes that were just experienced and are experiencing now. This is going to be something where investigators are going to have to go in and figure out, okay, we have a body. We need to match this person and tell the family and give them some closure so they're not waiting.
Certainly a very important thing to do, and that does bring it to real time though when you talk about that, because somebody that drowns, you never know where that water ends up or that body's going to end up. So yeah, that's certainly an important job to be able to get in and help the family understand what happened. It's not only adults, it's kids, it's babies, it's everything that way, that we've seen some horrible stories, and there'll be more as other hurricanes and other disasters like this happen. I'm going to switch and ask one more question. Cold cases seem to get talked about a lot. Is the
Right.
new technology enough to really be able to solve every case?
I'm never going to say that we can solve every case. And that's not because, oh, criminals they're getting better or they're learning from forensic science or anything like that. But a lot of the time, things just get missed, either because time has passed or random coincidences and things like that. But as technology gets better, we are going to be able to provide answers for a lot more people.
Well,
And like we're very fortunate in the sense that police detectives, investigators, lawyers, prosecutors, they've kept evidence from those cold cases. And they're basically just waiting for the time, the resources. And since we're talking about the criminalistics program here at Fort Hays, the trained personnel who can go in and look at those cases and say, hey, I know what we can do with this piece of evidence that we didn't have access to 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Well, Dr. Steele, that coming from Fort Hays State University and the program you're developing, I believe that starts next year, correct? Does that start in the spring or fall of 25?
So it actually just started. We started our first class. I am currently right now prepping the Introduction to Criminalistics course that's going to be taught here on Fort Hays campus this coming spring in 25. And then we're going to be teaching it online as well in the fall of 25.
Wow. Are you excited?
Very excited. I nerd out a lot in class right now, talking about like, oh, this is a really cool scientific thing that we could do with this type of evidence. And a lot of the time the students have to stop me and say, hey, this is not that class that you're excited about yet. So
I understand your excitement. And for those of us that are looking in from the outside, thank you for the work you do to do that. We hope we're not involved in one of these things that you're talking about, but if we do, it's nice to know that Fort Hays State is leading the way and being able to find more people to jump in to be able to help with that. So our guest today has been Dr. Morgan Steele, who's with Fort Hays State University and is working on the new criminalistics program that's going to be and now underway at Fort Hays State University. Dr. Steele, thanks for joining us.
thanks for having me, Gary.
And thanks to you for listening and watching our program here on Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times. It's brought to you by Worth Wealth Management, where you can live with confidence. I'm Gary Shorman.
Thanks for joining us for Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, presented by Worth Wealth Management. Join us right here next week for another episode with host Gary Shorman. Until then, remember to move forward ever, backward never.